Let me make sure I submit that. Okay. The ethical argument, presentation, feedback, and you are looking at Berk Ercin, right? Berk Ercin.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, it's recording, so you can start whenever you are ready. And we can see your screen, so it's great.
All right. Hello, my name is Berk Ercin. I'm a master's student. This is my first semester, and today I will be presenting an ethical dilemma known as trolley problem. Now, imagine you're watching a runaway trolley going down the tracks, straight towards 5 people who can't escape. You're standing next to a switch that will divert the trolley onto a second track. However, that second track also has a person on it, but just one. This is the most basic version of the dilemma known as the bystander at the switch. Throughout this presentation, we will investigate whether it is permissible to act in this situation, thereby causing a person to die by acting, or let the trolley perish 5 lives. First of all, I need to clarify that trolley problem is not just about deciding to divert the trolley to kill 1 rather than 5. It's not an isolated problem of action. It's not a question of what would you do or what you should do. Instead, it's a problem of how to explain seemingly contradictory judgments about right and wrong. Very first version of trolley problem, first devised in 1967 by Philippa Foot. In her, The Problem of Abortion and the Doctrine of the Double Effect paper. Judith Jarvis Thomson was another philosopher who studied and worked on ethics and metaphysics. She's credited with the naming, developing, and initiating the extensive literature on the trolley problem. According to classical utilitarianism, steering to track with 1 man on it is not only permissible, but morally speaking, it is the better option. In utilitarianism, the sole moral obligation is to maximize utility, or happiness, or pleasure. On the other hand, since moral wrongs are already in place, moving to another track constitutes a participation in the moral wrong, therefore making one partially responsible for the death when otherwise no one would be responsible. Another opposing argument would be about incommensurability of human lives. However, being present in the situation and being able to influence its outcome constitutes an obligation to participate. Because of this, deciding to do nothing would be considered as an immoral act if and only if one values 5 lives more than 1. So trying to decide by just our thoughts might be challenging. Even amongst philosophers, the answer is still not definitive. Let's try to use an algorithm of the doctrine of the double effect. In Foot's paper, abortion is considered in relation to the doctrine of the double effect, which distinguishes between the intentions behind an action and consequences foreseen but not desired. In our paper, Foot introduces some crucial distinctions, discussing the difference between doing and allowing to happen, and the related negative and positive duties. Foot argues that what matters in the doctrine is not the directness of the actor's intention, but whether they intend to follow a negative duty or positive duty. The doctrine of the double effect is an algorithm for solving all moral disputes in which an act will have 2 effects, one good and other bad. The doctrine says roughly that it is always wrong to do a bad act intentionally in order to bring about good consequences. but that is sometimes permissible to do a good act despite knowing that it will cause bad consequences. This doctrine consists of 4 conditions, as we can see. The first of all is the nature of act condition. The action must be either morally good or indifferent. Lying or intentionally killing an innocent person is never permissible. Sorry. The means end condition. And this is maybe the most important condition. And we will see why in the future. The bad effect must not be the means by which one achieves the good effect. The third condition is right intention. The intention must be the achieving of only the good effect, with the bad effect being only an unintended side effect. Fourth condition is a proportionality condition. The good effect must always be at least equivalent in importance to the bad effect. So let's give an example before diving deep into the trolley problem. The abortion example might help us understand what does Doctrine of the Double Effect say. The Doctrine of the Double Effect says that an abortion is not permissible because it violates first and second conditions. However, it is permissible if the woman's uterus happens to be cancerous, then she may have a hysterectomy. Hysterectomy is the surgical removal of the uterus. Because the act of removing a cancerous uterus is morally good, death of fetus is the unintended, thus it passes the third condition. Condition 2 is passed because the death of the fetus isn't the means of saving the woman's life, it is the act that saves her. Condition 4 holds true because it's greater good, at least as good as saving the fetus. So basically, this doctrine of the double effect allows it to happen. It sees this as a permissible action in case of a woman having a condition that needs an operation. Now, let's try to implement this algorithm into our topic and see if, according to Doctrine of the Double Effect, is permissible or not. If we consider the first condition, the act of switching the road is justifiable because our moral reason is to save lives. The second condition is true as well because the act of switching the road is the bad effect from the changing the road is only a side effect. It's not a means to sacrifice one. The intention is to save 5 lives. Again, it's not to sacrifice. So it's proportionate because saving 5 is at least as important as 1. So according to these conditions, it is morally permissible for bystander to flip this switch or lever. It is not only permissible according to the doctrine of double effect, it is also permissible for many people. Surveys show that 90% of people would flip the switch or lever and choose to kill 1 and save the 5. However, like I mentioned before, the trolley problem is not an isolated problem of action. In fact, this permissibility is only for bystander at the switch. The bystander at the switch does not represent the trolley problem by itself. The other part of the equation is the fat man. In the fat man scenario, there is only one track and the trolley is heading towards 5 people at the track. You're at the bridge which the track passes under it, but you are not alone. With you, there's a fat enough person who, if you push him down onto the track, can stop the trolley and save the lives of 5. Just like 90% of people would flip the switch at the bystander at the switch problem, 90% of people thinks it is not permissible to push the fat man onto the track in order to save the 5. Why is this happening? Why we can sacrifice one's life to save 5 in the bystander at the switch scenario, but not in the fat man case? If it is permissible to intervene in the so-called bystander at the switch scenario, while it is not permissible to intervene in the so-called fat man scenario, then the trolley problem arises. And we must explain the moral difference between these two cases. So let's try again, and let's again try to implement the doctrine of double effect and see if it has an answer for this situation. According to the double effect, in order to save 5 lives is wrong because it involves intentionally causing harm to the fat man, using him as a means to save the 5 lives. Contrary to utilitarian moral principles, morality is not merely reducible to overall consequences. One's intention plays an essential role in assessing the moral validity of an action. So, doctrine offers a solution. It's a possible answer. It's not definitive answer to the trolley problem because it can be deployed to argue that difference in moral permissibility results the one being killed as a means to saving the 5 in fat man, while in bystander at the switch, the killing of the one is a mere side effect of saving 5. The doctrine of the double effect is a normative principle according to which, in pursuing the good, it is sometimes morally permissible to bring about evil as a side effect or merely foreseen consequence. The same evil would not be morally justified as an intended means. However, there are some problems for this doctrine. A well-known one is the loop trolley problem. In this problem, you're back on the switch and you can send it down one of two paths. One path goes straight to where there are 5 people on the track. The other goes on a diversion where there is a fat man that will stop the trolley. If you flip the switch, the fat man will die. The trolley will stop. And 5 people will be saved. If you do not, 5 people will die and the fat man will be saved. This results in a problem for the doctrine when there is a loop in the track. Since the common intuition is that you should push the switch, however, the good effect would not be caused by the action, but by the bad effect. So this is unacceptable for the doctrine. So the doctrine is not enough by itself. Thomson argues that this case, in all morally relevant respects, identical to the standard bystander at the switch case, and that therefore it is permissible to turn the trolley in one case, it must be permissible in the loop case as well. She says, we cannot really suppose that the presence or absence of that extra bit of track makes a major moral difference as to what an agent may do in those cases. And it really does seem right to think that the agent may proceed. Yet at the same time, she thinks the case seems indistinguishable from the fat man case. In both cases, you are using the fat man as a means to save the lives of the 5 people, Because of this, for Thomson, we need a new way of accounting for our intuitions in these cases. In her 1985 article called The Trolley Problem, Thomson explains the difference between the bystander pulling a lever to switch the trolley tracks and pushing a large person onto the tracks by reference to rights. Thomson argues that the action of pulling a lever and the action of pushing a person are different, and one that violates someone's right to life and the other doesn't. It's important to note here that she's talking about the actual action of pulling a lever or pushing someone. It is true that in either case, one is killing a person. We might want to say that doing so through any action in this situation is a violation to their right life. According to Thomson, in the case of pulling the lever, this is morally acceptable, but not in the case of pushing someone off a bridge. The difference is in the kind of action one actually performs. Shoving a person is infringing a right of his, even if this results in any injury. Even if this doesn't result in any injury or death for the person shoved, just push them off a bridge in itself violates a right of theirs. On the other hand, pulling a lever to make a trolley switch track is not itself an infringement of the right of anybody. Bystanders could flip the switch and turn the trolley, and there could be no one on the track. The action of pulling the lever and turning the trolley by itself doesn't infringe a right. So pushing a person violates a right, but pulling a lever does not. That's why pushing someone onto track is not morally permissible. Thomson wrote about the trolley problem again in 2008. And she changed her mind about whether why bystander is morally permitted to turn the trolley in the first place. Thomson's argument moves from a variant in which you also have to chance to divert the trolley onto yourself. If you would not be willing to divert the trolley onto yourself, sacrificing your life to save the five, then it would not permissible to sacrifice someone else. Questions raised by the trolley problem are still not settled. So there are some criticism about the trolley problem in general. In 2014, a paper published in the Social and Personality Psychology Compass, researchers criticized the use of the trolley problem, arguing, among other things, that the scenario it presents is too extreme and unconnected to real life moral situations to be useful or educational. The authors opine that to make cold calculations about hypothetical situations in which every alternative will result in one or more gruesome death is to encourage a type of thinking that is devoid of human empathy and assumes a mandate to decide who lives or dies. They also question the premise of the scenario. For example, if I am forced against my will into a situation where people will die and I have no ability to stop it, how is my choice is a moral choice between meaningful different options, as opposed to the horror show I've just been thrust into, in which I have no meaningful agency at all. In 2018 article published in Psychological Review, researchers point out that as measures of utilitarian decisions, sacrificial dilemmas such as the trolley problem measures only one facet of proto-utilitarian tendencies, namely premises attitudes towards instrumental harm while ignoring impartial concern for the greater good. As such, the authors argued that the trolley problem provides only a partial measure of utilitarianism. The trolleyology has been criticized by some philosophers and psychologists. They argue that it doesn't reveal anything because its premises is so unrealistic that study participants don't take it seriously. But and if technology is making this kind of ethical analysis more important than ever, for example, driverless cars may have to handle choices like causing a small accident to prevent a larger one. Meanwhile, governments are researching autonomous military drones that could wind up making decisions of whether they will risk civilian casualties to attack a high-value target. If you want these actions to be ethical, we have to decide in advance how to value human life and judge the greater good. So in conclusion, I support the decision of the Thomson's first opinion about the trolley problem, which was in 1985, because while showing the not showing the fat man in the track, they are two totally different situations, and we are looking to answer the moral reasons for that. And I support that in the bystander of the switch scenario, I say it's permissible because we are not infringing anyone's life. In that situation, it's not a means to save other lives, but it's just a foreseen negative side effect. And that's it for my presentation. Thank you for listening. If you have any question, I will try to answer them.
All right, well, very informative, very good. It's a good start to our ethical dilemma presentations. Let's see. One thing I did want to say is, your fat man example has given me a lot of motivation to lose weight so that no one pushes me in front of a trolley, that's for sure. So the doctrine of the double effect, it was interesting because the two that you presented at the initial original trolley problem being the bystander at the switch, and then the other one being to actually push someone into there. So it wasn't about it wasn't about in the bystander to the switch that they know that the pulling the switch is going to impact someone else, right? Is going to cause the death of someone else. So it's not that they don't know it, and then it's because I'm kind of trying to figure out how that it was able to be seen as an unintended side effect, as according to the doctrine of the double effect, where how is it seen as an unintended side effect if we know that that's going to result, if we know that that's going to happen? Because does that make sense?
Yeah, but okay.
Yeah.
Is that so? It's unintended side effect because we're not like in the example of fat man, we're not pushing someone, or we're not directly. The action matters here. The action is to, in the fat man case, we are directly pushing it. So in order to save the 5, we are pushing one to his death. But in the bystander at the switch, we're not intentionally killing that person. It's just a side effect. Like that's the difference.
I see.
One of them is the means and condition. It doesn't provide that. But other one is only the side effect.
I see. And when did you say this paper was originally proposed? The doctrine of the double effect was originally discussed?
Well, in the 1967 paper of the
Okay.
Foods paper, it has been only written, but this doctrine of the double effect is not, as far as I know, is not her work. It's
Oh,
I guess it was mostly used by Catholic churches to stand against abortion. I guess something like that.
I see. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Is anyone
and
else? Oh, go ahead.
I didn't mention the surgeon thingy because the fat man case is a direct parallel to surgeon,
Mhm.
like organ harvesting thing. That's why I used the fat man parallel here instead of that.
Right. I had heard the surgeon analogy as well. The 5 patients needing organs, and goes and kills one person to get the organs to help save the 5 people. Yeah. So, all right, great. Does anyone else have any other comments or questions? Notice Seth's comment kind of also, I think he made that before your slide about sacrificing yourself, but he kind of made that comment as well.
Yeah. It's about the 2018 at 2008 paper of the Thomson's the third option. It's talking
Right.
about that one. If you can't sacrifice yourself, you have no right to sacrifice someone else. Therefore, actually, Thomson changed her opinion about this matter. And first, she was saying it was permissible for bystander at the switch scenario, and later on, she changed her opinion to not permissible, because if you can't sacrifice yourself, you have no right to sacrifice others.
Good point. All right, wonderful. So does anyone else have any comments or questions before we try to fit one more presentation in? Last call, and okay. Let me end the recording. I'm going to